Excuse me. Are you or your loved ones facing a serious legal battle? The law office of Paul Harris wants you to know you aren't alone. Do you need someone that's not afraid to go to trial and fight for your rights? Attorney Paul Harris and his team are willing to go where most firms are not. The courtroom. With a successful track record in civil litigation, criminal defense, including tax issues and healthcare fraud, Harris Law Office will fight for their clients by offering the most aggressive representation in and out of court. Call Paul Harris at Harris Law Office for a free consultation. 304-232-5300.
Hello, everyone. From the Watchdog, I'm the Storm Tracker, Darnell Foster. With a look at your local weather forecast for your Tuesday. Mix of sun and clouds. Daytime high of 78 degrees. Partly cloudy overnight with a low near 57. Plenty of sunshine for your Wednesday, with highs in the low 80s. Have yourself a great day, everyone. From the Watchdog, I'm Darnell Foster.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of this station or its sponsors.
News, information, conversation, controversy, and fun. This is the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe.
And I tell you, I am really digging this hazelnut coffee that my wife got for me. Man, it is good. I've been just used to basic decaf coffee, which I've been for a couple of years. That's what I've been living on, but in the morning here. But man, it's got some caffeine in it, which I don't normally drink in the morning. But this is just so good. You know, Biffy, how some of the times coffee just smells particularly good too. This smells good, tastes good, man. I'm digging it. I'm digging it here this morning. What's coming up today? Baylor rolls over Gonzaga to win the national championship last night. We heard some of the highlights, and I guess she's our friend. I hope she's our friend. One of our listeners, Joyce Wright, was the winner in our Watchdog Madness contest, so she'll win the big screen TV that we'll be giving away in Watchdog Madness. And the contest, of course, was sponsored by West Liberty University. Governor Justice's tax summit ended with no agreements and very little change in position by any of the three major players, the super majority-controlled Senate, the super Republican majority-controlled House, and the governor. Everybody kind of said, oh, yeah, we want to work a little bit together, but nobody could agree with any changes. And so in the end, it ended with not a bang, but a whimper. The governor said, well, maybe we should we'll meet again on this. I don't think they'll meet again. Brad McElhenney coming up from Metro News, and he and I will talk about that. Tom Scudiera, our national correspondent, coming up in a minute or two. Got a number of things I want to talk about there. Wheeling looking for big picture projects to spend federal dollars on, and I guess they'll talk about that today at the Economic and Community Development Committee meeting. And when do you feel middle age is a question that I've got a potential answer for. I can tell you it was a long time ago for me. I've gone long past middle age into feeling old. Let's see. We're up on the video feed now. That didn't work earlier this morning. And that was my fault. That was the fault here at my end of things. I think Biffy's got our TV7 newscast figured out and Bill DeFabio's sportscast figured out. They weren't working earlier this morning. And we welcome to the program now Tom Scudieri, our national correspondent. Tom was having trouble with his internet at home too, right, Tom?
Yeah, I still can't get it working. I don't know what's going on. The cable TV is working, so it's not the whole system. But they're two different things. I realize that, but that means I paid my bill at least because the cable's working.
Yeah, that's
always my first. That's always my first check when the internet's not working. Whoops, did that bill get paid?
Believe me, I understand that. Yeah, we had our video feed up, and like literally just as the theme song started playing, my video feed just went down, and that's because my internet here at the house went down. So it came back up. So I don't know. I think it's just one of those days where the technical gods have just said, I think I'll cause some trouble today for everybody.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, for me, this is my 2 weeks after my second shot day. So, I can't really complain about the internet. The phone works. I look back and we laugh about how these things go, but think about it. When you were mentioning, middle age and stuff like that, but when you and I both started in the business, we didn't have cell phones or internet or anything like that, and we still managed to get good stories. So there you go.
When I did show prep back in the old days, show prep was a newspaper and a ruler.
There you go.
You know,
Yeah,
and you just
read.
you read the newspaper, saw a story you want to talk about, you just ripped it out of the paper using a ruler. So now I go online at 4:00 in the morning and I read the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Hill, and the Politico, and the local newspapers, and the statewide. You know, now it all comes right into my little phone or my computer. But yeah, so.
My son, who's now 16. 17, excuse me, he saw a photograph of me in Uzbekistan right after 9/11 attacks, and I was in a field, and he said, "What are you doing?" And we had a telescope, and it was a satellite phone. Remember those? They came in.
The big ones, yeah, exactly, yeah. I used to have the. Of course, I was a gadget guy forever, so I had every iteration of cell phone they ever had. We first started using it at the radio station when they were. I mean, literally, there were only 2 channels in the entire Upper Ohio Valley, and we were broadcasting a live broadcast. It was the marathon race that we had here in town, still have here in town, actually. But so I would go out to a reporter in the field and say, let's go out to 16th Street and see what's happening. But if somebody else in the entire community wanted to use the phone, the operator had to go, "Excuse me, we must interrupt your broadcast now. Bob Jones wants to make a phone call." So things were different.
There you go.
Hey, let's talk about somebody who's got bigger problems just for a minute. I don't want to make too big. It is a big deal. I shouldn't say that, but I'm trying not to fall into the trap of sensationalizing things. But how much trouble is Matt Gaetz in, do you think?
Well, I think the silence is an indication of a kind of estrangement he's in, at the very least. Trouble, it depends on what you're looking for as trouble. I mean, is he safe to get reelected in his district? I would not vote, no pun intended, vote against that. He won pretty easily in that district. It's a heavily conservative Republican district who likes what he's doing. At least they did. His father is influential in that part of the state. And so, politically speaking, in the sense of getting reelected, I can't get a read on that because I'm not down there reporting. However, when folks like this take a lead, President Trump, of course, is notorious, former President Trump is notorious for not sticking up for people once they get into trouble. He's been silent on this whole thing, even though Gaetz has been one of Donald Trump's most vocal supporters and cheerleaders. So his House members aren't really saying in support of him either. The one question I'm watching from a purely insider Washington perspective, Howard, is he's on, I think, the Intelligence Committee, the House Intelligence Committee, or the Justice Committee. And he's being investigated by this is Justice Committee. So he's being investigated by the Justice Department and the FBI. He has oversight, technically, of those jurisdictions. There may be an effort by Democrats to have him removed from that committee because of that, apparent conflict of interest, or at least visual conflict of interest. That would be interesting then to see how Republicans rally to his side or don't rally to his side. But these kind of scandals, someone said on Twitter the other day, not me, I don't remember who, but I want to give credit to whoever did it, said, didn't anyone ever tell Matt Gaetz he has the right to remain silent? Because every time he seems to go on Twitter or says something, he just kind of makes, even Tucker Carlson, had that puzzled look on his face a couple days ago when he was on the show.
Yeah, I think, look, we've come to recognize that you can, God, look at President Trump, you can outlast a sex scandal. Now, the original allegations are, and they're not confirmed, but that the Justice Department is looking into sex with an underage child. That is a little bit different. But he might be able to hold off even against that if there are no charges brought. But now there's sex trafficking and human trafficking sort of, tertiarily, is that a good word, tertiarily? It's sort of tied around him. I think he's in some real serious trouble, and he's not getting a lot of support from Republicans, at least not right now.
No.
Kevin McCarthy said, he would, consider removing him from committees if this goes much further. I think he's in some deep trouble.
The other comment I caught was Katie Hill, the former Democratic congressperson from California, had to resign after somebody circulated photographs of her with her lover, and Gaetz actually defended her. But what she said was yeah, and the latest allegation is it gets brought photos to the house floor not once but at least twice to circulate and show others of these girls. She said that's the same thing that people did to me. So she was not inclined to speak out against him because he was one of the few members of Congress who said nice things about her to how unfair she was being treated, and she was a Democrat too. So her point was, the things he does like that is what's harmful as well.
It's such a, again, it's not a typical sex scandal, and it's sad to say, but there are now such things as typical sex scandals.
Yeah.
This one is really sleazy, the allegations surrounding it, and that elected official that he's connected with that is already being investigated for human trafficking or sex trafficking, and underage girls showing pictures on the House floor. But let's be very clear, Gates denies it all and has said he will not resign. So I want to get his perspective in here as well. But I just personally think he's got some real serious problems. Looks like Georgia's got some problems too, right?
Yeah, I've said this on your show before, I know this, and I find it interesting that people who oppose the actions of companies and others who are complaining about Georgia's law point like, well, New York has restrictive laws, Colorado has restrictive laws, they point to other states. They probably do. And it doesn't make those laws right either. I told you this story once before, and I apologize to listeners for rapidly repeating it as I'm about to, is when I was covering the conflict in Bosnia, we would come up to paramilitary groups who were burning villages and destroying things and just being really rotten. And they would say, in this case it'd be the Serb militias, and they'd say, why are you writing about us? And the Croats are doing the same thing, and the Muslims are doing the same, which they were. And we would say to them, well, first of all, we see you do it, you got caught. And second, just because someone else is doing something bad, it doesn't justify you doing it. Something bad. And that's the point. I've kept that with me, and it's amazing how that could be applied to so much in politics. Okay, let's agree that other states have restrictive voting laws and probably should be changed, and they should go back and change them. They're not implementing them now. I mean, and it's not a new laws on the books. It could be revisited. And this is what Georgia did. They revisited their law that worked in an election when nobody has found any fraud. The Republican leadership in that state did not find any fraud, as we've said repeatedly. Record turnouts. People are unhappy with the turnout if you're a Republican because the Democrats did well. That's a political reason to change the rules so that doesn't happen again. It doesn't justify making the system better. Now, could they make it better? Probably. Everybody can always make a system tweak it a little bit better. But this doesn't necessarily. And I looked through the law, and there are some good parts about it. But, when you start restricting mail-in and ballot drop-off and stuff like that, that's the kind of stuff that is a step backwards. So the reaction of Coca-Cola and Delta and these big companies that are in Georgia, I find it interesting. There was the cutoff of some advertising of people who supported the insurrection. We'll see how long that lasts. I'm always wondering if this is done and then quietly people return to the old status quo.
Yeah, the Georgia law is designed to be a remedy for a problem that didn't exist.
Yeah.
And it seems to me, if you take the law in its entirety, I know a lot of Republicans are trying to isolate certain parts of it and say, well, this is important, or why are Democrats arguing against this? But when you take it in a toto, and I've read the whole bill. It is designed to restrict voting. Now, there are, as you point out, some parts of it that are okay and parts of it that are actually good. But it is essentially designed to restrict voting, make it harder to vote. And although I think it's a very minor matter, I want to say that again, I think it's a minor matter. The reality is they specifically inserted a clause saying, providing no food or drink to anybody who's waiting in line. That just seems to me to be unnecessarily, I don't want to use the word cruel, but harsh.
I think that's a red herring, to be honest with you. I think it's inserted in there in large part to do what we're doing right now, talking about that part and not talking about the other parts, because that's such an obvious cruel thing to do, as you point out. And, why would you do that? And you know, it's immediately people say, well, what if someone's a diabetic and needs help, and there's, you know, well, then you deal with it, I guess. But yeah, you're right. That seems very unnecessary, and probably could have been. I don't want to guess their motivation, you know, behind that. But if it is to sort of restrict and let me change that word, to limit, you know, outsiders coming up to people in line, which, you know, is something worth looking at. There's probably better ways to phrase it and to characterize it.
Tom, I need to do a quick break, and Biffy, let's make this a quick one. But I want to get to an area of your expertise, because I read a piece last night that, at least the piece I read, was somewhat frightening. Russia is building up some military in the Arctic, and what I was reading sounds kind of scary. So let's talk about that when we come back and see what the Pentagon is talking about. Tom Scudieri, our national correspondent, here with us this morning on the Watchdog Morning Show. It's 8:24.
Let your voice be heard. Or call 304-639-7754.
Ready to complete your degree? Ohio Dominican University offers high-demand degree completion options 100% online. Pursue your bachelor's in high-demand fields such as business, risk management, and more. Ohio Dominican's affordable tuition means an ODU degree not only fits your schedule, it also fits your budget. Earn your degree online from an accredited university that has called Columbus home for over 100 years. Take the first step at ohiodominican.edu/adult.
With spring approaching, if you're thinking about planting a tree, the Ohio chapter of the International Society of Arboriculture has some tips. Plant trees where they have plenty of room to grow to reduce the need for future pruning, and that includes space for roots to grow. Plant trees that are suitable for your area, and be careful not to plant them too deep. That can be fatal. For more tips on how to properly plant trees or to find a certified arborist near you, go to treesforohio.org. That's trees4ohio.org.
Tridelphia. The Watchdog is protecting your yard. Join Howard Monroe, Hoppy Kercheval, Bill DeFabio, and Big Rick for the best live and local talk in the Upper Ohio Valley and beyond. Tridelphia trusts the Watchdog.
You can watch a video cast of our show every morning on Facebook Live or on our website. Plus, check archives of all of our videos on the Watchdog YouTube channel. The Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe continues.
50 degrees and clear at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. 50 degrees and sunny here at my home studios in Elm Grove. 50 degrees at the Robinson Auto Group Studios, downtown Wheeling in the heart of the Ohio Valley. Going to get up to mid-70s today, 74, 75 degrees or so, and a nice day is in store. Tom Scudieri is our national correspondent. He's here with us every Tuesday. Tom, tell me what you know about this story that I alluded to before the break. I read a piece last night. Russia building up some military activity in the Arctic and testing some new weapons, including one with a stealth torpedo or something like that. That sounds pretty scary to me.
It is scary, and it's really unnerving. And the Pentagon, as you know, and most of your listeners know, the Pentagon, like most agencies, always tries to talk in coded bureaucratic ease. So when they actually say something with some clarity, we take that with the proper perspective. So John Kirby, he's the chief spokesperson at the Pentagon, had a briefing yesterday, and one of the things we talked to someone asked him about this, and he said that we recognize that this is a key region. And what he says, what caught my ear, is it's a potential strategic corridor, and it's vulnerable to expanded competition. That's what he says. It's vulnerable. What he means is that we're behind, and we've known we've been behind in the race for the Arctic. Part of this has to do with, and this is not being critical, part of it has to do with the fact that the United States has been mired in anti-terrorism activities for 20 years, and as we stated before, Russia and China have been able to sort of see what areas where we're strong and weak and cherry-pick those areas and put their money into development of stuff like hypersonics, and artificial intelligence. Well, the Russians have included in that their new weapons, and they saw the fact that global warming has made the Arctic a very important commercial as well as military part of the world. It's the smallest ocean, the Arctic Ocean, but again, the dream of sailing over the ocean, cuts transit time and expenses, something pointed out recently by the blockage in the Suez Canal. Yeah. So Russia has built nuclear reactors and upped their bases, their military basement, and one of the things they've tested, as you pointed out, it's called the Poseidon II M39. It's an unmanned stealth torpedo powered by a nuclear reactor, And so this was tested last year, was tested again in February of this year, just a month and a half ago. The idea is that it will elude coastal defenses, U.S. and NATO coastal defenses, according to Norway's intelligence folks. And they know, obviously, because they border Russia, and that's a key potential battleground area. So they have military bases, they have underground storage facilities on the coastline, new radars close to Alaska. And over the last couple of weeks, the Russians have been sending a lot of aircraft and submarines into the sort of the Alaska defense zone, and U.S. and Canadian planes have scrambled. They've done the same, by the way, last week into NATO airspace as well. But we're talking mostly about the Arctic here. So yeah, the long answer to your question, but the story, I don't know which story you read, but it's absolutely on point, and it's really concerning to the Pentagon. One more thing is many senators and House members, bipartisan members, have voiced concern about sort of the lack of U.S. military equipment and personnel up in Alaska in particular and in the Arctic. The Coast Guard only has one icebreaker, an old one, for example. We're way behind in material, and everyone says, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, but it hasn't really been done.
The story I read said that the Poseidon II M39, the stealth torpedo, could conceivably create a radioactive tsunami that could hit our west coast if it hits its potential. I mean, I'm not suggesting they're going to do that.
Who knows? The nuclear explosion. They always like to often compare as the force of X number of volcanic explosions, etc. That's exploding volcano can cause tsunami, so it's not it's not unreasonable to think a nuclear explosion at the right location would cause a tsunami of immense proportions. Both water tsunami and a destructive tsunami, both with the radiation and the punch itself. It's a nuclear weapon. I mean, it's a nuclear. It could be a nuclear weapon, even though it's a stealth torpedo. It's clearly what scares the Pentagon.
It's a nuclear weapon,
and the fact that they're lining the bases. And of course, China's also invested in the Arctic. They've declared themselves an Arctic nation, even though they don't border on the Arctic. That's because they recognize the importance of the Arctic as well.
Well, I just saw the piece last night, and I wanted to get your take on it. It gave me a little pause, and I do think I just never think about the Arctic as being a military conflict area, but I guess it can't.
Well, that's because for so long it was the ice prohibited that essentially. There's such I believe a wealth of minerals and oil up there as well. The economic aspects of it were always protected in a sense from the ice, by the ice, excuse me. But now that ice is melting, as we know, and that's another debate. But nevertheless, it's opening up. The waterways are opening up. Its access is better, and so now it takes less of an effort to go there and to perhaps drill and mine the minerals. So, in Antarctica, which of course is the South Pole, is protected still by an international treaty against development and militarization. No such treaty exists for the Arctic.
And that's a story we'll have to keep watching. I know you will for us. Tom, I appreciate your time this morning, as always. Hope you get your internet fixed, and we'll talk again next Tuesday.
Thanks. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Tom Squitieri, our national correspondent, checking in this morning here on the Watchdog Morning Show. This story out of, I guess it's out of the Pentagon, but this story about Russia building up the military in the Arctic, and in particular the stealth torpedo, which, powered by a nuclear reactor, it could conceivably, if it hits its potential, they could fire a torpedo under the ocean. It would create a radioactive tsunami that could hit the West Coast. Now, that's like worst case scenario, but that's scary stuff. That's scary stuff. 8:35, 25 to the hour. I don't know if it was scary. It was certainly interesting. The big tax summit yesterday in Charleston. Brad McElhenney will help me talk about that coming up next on the Watchdog Morning Show.
The WTRF Channel 7 News Update is brought to you by Thomas Auto Centers, Mall Road, St. Clairsville. Get the best deal at Thomas Auto Centers.
Now it's time for your local news headlines from 7 News at WTRF, My Ohio Valley, and ABC Ohio Valley. Only on AM 1600 WKKX. The Watchdog.
Good Tuesday morning, Ohio Valley. I'm Stephen Ruffing with your 7 News headlines. Ohio's new
Alrighty, thank you. Yeah, it worked. Now we'll see if Bill works next hour. I can't fit. How in the world did we get a March 23rd in there, though? I don't. All right. Well, we'll find out.
Filtering. At Panhandle, we continue to follow social distancing and hygiene protocols. We are dedicated to our community, and together, we will get through this.
Over the years, you've brought opioids into your home. They helped when you were in pain, and you held on to them, just in case. But holding on to opioids puts your family at risk. Learn more at www.fda.gov/drug disposal.
The Watchdog prides itself in being involved in our community, and we want to hear from you. Does your organization have an event that you would like promoted on the radio? Please send us the details via our website, watchdognetwork.com. Just click on our contact page and fill the information. Live, local, and here for our community. Share your events with the Watchdog.
It's your turn to talk. From politics to pet peeves, get it off your chest and on the air. The Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe continues.
Sunny and bright today, a high of 75. Currently 50 degrees and sunny at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport here at my home studios in Elm Grove and at the Robinson Autograph Studios downtown Wheeling in the heart of the Ohio Valley. Well, yesterday was the big summit day. Governor Justice called a summit of all the key players to come together in Charleston and talk about the income tax proposals. That's a multiple number of proposals that are pending from the House, from the Senate, and from the governor. With, I guess the hope of working out some kind of an agreement, although I'm not sure I heard anybody really wanting to make a whole lot of change. Brad McElhenney with us this morning. Brad, it seemed to me it ended not with a bang, but a whimper yesterday.
Yes, I would agree with you. The last statement that I tweeted came from the governor. He said, "So let's just keep working, okay?" One of those like, "Well, let's keep in touch."
I'll call you. Let's have lunch. Of course, let's keep working. Yeah, let's keep working with 4 days left.
I don't know where this is going. Let's have that caveat right up front. And I'm not sure anyone does. So when the governor announced this summit, the first time I heard about it was with Hoppy on Talkline on Friday. And I heard the governor say, well, we're going to get everybody together and we're going to talk it over. It's going to be a very open and honest discussion. And if it doesn't come together, that's it. Cut bait. That's what I heard him say.
Well, that's it. It's time to cut bait.
Right, yeah. But yesterday he got, I thought, bordering on frustrated and indicated that he doesn't think the people understand the ins and outs of these plans and how they might benefit. And he said something about he would go around the state selling it. And as you mentioned, there's 4 days now left in the legislative session. So I would assume that if he's going to go on a road tour and talk this up, it's going to be this spring, early summer. I don't know where we're going or what the end point is or, how we get there, when we know it's over. I don't know anything. I'm a kid in the back seat.
The governor made a little bit of modification to his plan, but just a little bit. I think when he dropped the tobacco, I can't remember he made a few minor modifications to his own plan, but basically he stuck to his plan, and I didn't get any sense. I watched a good bit of it on YouTube, and then I relied on your multiple tweets to keep me up to date on the rest of it. I didn't get any sense that anybody was really willing to move off of their position, right?
Yeah, that you perceived it the way I did, that the governor took his original plan and made a little bit of tweaking to it. And he made some changes to the tobacco tax, removed some of the booze provisions, and then spent a lot of time talking about some changes to the way his tiered severance tax proposal would work. But what I found interesting was the Senate leadership perception of those changes. And Senate President Blair and Senate Finance Chairman Tarr were pretty honest about their caucus. They don't think can support the increase part of the severance taxes on the energy industries, and they've got that entire section not in their plan because they just don't see the votes for it. And Senator Blair said something about, he thought that maybe the governor had brought it a little closer where they could get enough votes and get it to pass. But I thought that open discussion of vote counting and the mix of some plan that may get across the line or not was really interesting. And it reminded me, it's been a while now, but that bill just narrowly, the Senate version, got out of Senate Finance by one vote cast by a very reluctant, concerned Mike Maroney. Right. He was the decisive vote on it. So, where does this stand now on the Senate floor if they're just openly saying it's got to be the right mix of taxes or we can't do it? I find it very interesting.
And as a practical matter, the governor's newest plan, which he now calls, and he says it's not for me, but he's calling it justice for all. Okay. His newest plan, of course,
with the number 4.
With the number 4, right? Justice for all. But it's not because of me. It's because I think this is what it's for. But it hasn't. There is no such thing as far as an actual bill being introduced. So, if anybody is going to pick up on justice for all, it's going to have to be brought into some form in probably the Senate, I would assume, modifying maybe the Senate's bill. And that just does not seem to me likely. Even if some member of the Senate wants to do it, I don't see there being enough support to get a modified version, justice for all, and put back in there. So it just seems to me as a practice. But again, you're the expert. I'm just the guy on the outside looking in. It just seems to me like this at this stage of the game is dead.
I am with you. The best case scenario I see is you cobble together, you get a plan that has the exact right or almost exact right balance that can get across the line in the Senate, maybe narrowly, and then you bounce it into the House, and the governor and supporters at that point maybe could apply pressure on the House and say, look, 2 of the 3 entities here are really for it. Don't you want West Virginians to have income tax relief? And then maybe you try to push to sort of triangulate on the House at this point. But House Finance Chairman Householder, in his statements yesterday at the summit, was pretty clear that the House is just, particularly the majority, but I think, there was some reflection of the minority view there, that they're really worried about this increased sales tax and the way it may affect businesses in West Virginia's many border counties. That's been a consistent position for weeks now in the House, and Householder didn't change the way he described that. So, you do have to have a plan that the governor supports that can get across the Senate and that then would potentially pass in the House. And the House is the major question mark. I'm not quite clear on where the support is in the Senate right now either.
I was on with Hoppy on Friday, and he was all excited because he just talked to the governor. He said, do you think that they can hammer out a deal? I said, I don't want them to hammer out a deal. That's not what I want when we're talking about major tax reform. I don't want them to hammer out a deal. That implies I'll give a little, you give a little, we'll squeeze the square peg into the round hole, and hopefully I don't want that. I mean, if we're going to do major tax reform, which is what we're talking about here, it needs to be thought out and considered and every aspect reviewed and fiscal notes applied to all of it. I don't want them to hammer out a deal. I mean, just speaking as a citizen of the state, I don't want them to hammer out a deal. I want them to give serious thought to how you're going to do this. And I don't think any of the entities have given enough in-depth thought to it. Again, my opinion, but that's what I'm thinking.
House Minority Leader Scaff made a similar point last night, and some of these comments were, and it didn't matter which party, but some were, you begin by saying something nice, like, thank you, Governor, for leading this discussion. Thank you for bringing this all together. That was just sort of the nature of it. And Scaff did a little bit of that. He said, this is an idea worth considering, but he said, look, we got the governor's plan. Scaff said day 41. I haven't fact-checked that, but it was later than I would have thought in the legislative session, considering it was the governor's top priority, and he mentioned it right after the general election, made a big deal out of it during his State of the State speech, and then time passed, significant time that you could have been spent having a public discussion about it. And Scaff said, look, here we are at day 55, and we're still trying to come to terms with what we think is right and wise. It feels like it's been a beat behind the entire legislative session if it was something people really wanted to do.
And I got the impression, and maybe I read it wrong from watching, but some of the members sort of straggled in. Who was it? Eric? Somebody didn't show up at the beginning of the meeting, and you could hear muttering in the background. Someone said, "You got to be kidding me!" I mean, I got the sense that not all of the members of the legislature were there, but they weren't really there. If you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So that is true. That at the beginning there was conversation among those up on stage who'd already gathered about whether Senate Finance Chairman Tarr was coming. And Senate President Blair just said, yeah, he's not coming, he's got work to do. And Senator Mike Walfle, who I believe is the whip now in the Senate, on the minority side, the Democrats, and Walfle said, Craig, are you kidding me? He said, Tarr's not coming? And he was a little late. And then on the House side, the House was still running committee meetings, including finance. And that's the danger of saying, well, we're having a summit right in the middle of legislative stuff, the home stretch. So House Majority Leader Amy Summers, and House Finance Chairman Eric Householder came in a little bit late. And, what was kind of funny, just according to people's habits, was the governor was early. He was 4 minutes early, and he was in the middle of the table, and he was sitting there waiting. And he is, as you know, Howard, he is not an early person. But he was waiting, and it was really just sort of awkward, and you did read into the absences, are they just not excited about this? A couple of things, that were happening in the background. The governor was pretty blunt with his criticism about the Senate plan, and I heard that Tarr didn't really care for that. The governor talks the way he talks, and just his criticism was pretty direct about it. And then there was a House GOP caucus with the governor a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about their different plans, and I heard from multiple delegates, not from Eric Householder himself, but from others, that got pretty blunt, and that the governor had at least been insulting about the House plan, if not maybe taking it to a personal level. And a bunch of the delegates really took umbrage about that, and there was some back and forth. So, in addition to policy differences, there are some strained personality differences right now.
Yeah.
And you'd like to think that your elected leaders are above that, and everything is just about the policy. But when you're tired and maybe you've come to have some feelings about the other person you're dealing with, it's human nature that these things do play a role.
Yeah, and again, I think that the fact that some of the key players, like Eric Tarr, didn't show up, weren't there, sharp and ready to roll at the beginning. And let's keep in mind the governor had to move his summit from noon to 4 o'clock because the legislature, the House and the Senate, I think, were both conducting normal business. It's to me that goes to an issue of priorities. They're going, no, we're going to keep on doing our business. Same thing. What was the House Finance Committee was still dealing with stuff while the summit was underway. It tells you where their priorities are. To me, it's an issue of it says something about where their priorities are. And I just don't think it was with this summit. And I think, again, I'm just offering an opinion here, but I think that's because none of the sides really went into this with an idea they were going to give very much, and none of them really did.
Yeah, I mean, the way the governor went about announcing the summit, first he announced on Talkline, statewide radio, that he was having a summit, and it was news to everyone, which was great for us. That was news. Yeah. But then he talked about it in his COVID briefing on Friday and specified the day, the time, the participants. And then it was 3 hours before the key players, the Senate President, the House Speaker, the minority leaders in both houses, 3 hours passed before they actually got invitations. And they had not heard about it, except that it was trickling to them because the governor had made these otherwise public statements. And so there was an assumption there from the beginning that they would, put everything aside. And so their floor sessions are at 10 or 11, sort of mid to late morning anyway. And to say at this point you're going to do something at noon, well, that's a big, carve out of time. So then the governor switched it to 4, and also, it seems, was preparing his latest plan. But even at 4, they're running committee meetings and working into the evening. So the machine runs, and it's hard to stop the machine if you're, day 55 of a legislative session.
Well, and I think right there's the key factor. It's day 55. Now it's day 56. Got 4 days left to go. I don't see it happen. Special session, maybe. Blue Ribbon Committee or Task Force, maybe. And it's not just this, by the way. I got it real quick. Headline from Metro News. Senate determines time is short to deal with 400-page criminal code rewrite. I mean, there's just a lot going on and not much time to get any of this stuff done. But I know that we'll find out about it when we follow your tweets and read your articles at wvmetronews.com, and we'll probably hear you with Hoppy again today as well. I do appreciate your time with. Yeah, thanks a lot. Have a good day. Talk to you soon. Brad McElhenney, Metro News. Let's go to ABC News. They're already in progress.
The Watchdog is FM 98.1, AM 1600 WKKX Wheeling, FM 97.7, AM 1370 WVLY Moundsville.
The ABC News is brought to you by Thomas Auto Centers, Mall Road, St. Clairsville. Get the best deal at Thomas Auto Centers.
16 states.
If